We have always had what we call UFO hotspots, or certain locations that for some reason seem to have more than their share of UFO sighting reports. The state of Texas certainly is one of these, and I would like to discuss what I believe are the 10 best UFO cases from the Lone Star State. These cases have been of great interest to UFO researchers for many years. Although debunkers have always had various alternate explanations for these cases, the 10 you find here are well documented and accepted as legitimate by most UFO researchers. The early years. 3 cases. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, the great airship sightings were making news, and there were 3 important cases reported in Texas during this time period. Occurring in January 1878, one of the earliest cases of interest was the Denison, Texas UFO. While most researchers attribute the term UFO to the 1947 sighting by pilot Kenneth Arnold, it was actually used in 1878 when Texas farmer John Martin described a flying object he saw during a hunting trip. The flying machine was distant and small at first, but soon grew larger as it flew toward him. As it moved right over his head, he could see a saucer-shaped dark object. Martin's experience was published by the Denison Daily News, with a strange phenomenon heading the article. A case that is quite well known is the Aurora crash of 1897. A movie was even made of the incident. In April, a flying ship of unknown origin crashed into the small town, destroying a windmill in the process. Allegedly, a small being's body was discovered among the debris. Also, the debris contained hieroglyphic-like writing on a strange metal. The town gave the being a proper burial in their cemetery. The case gained public popularity from the writings of Dallas Morning News reporter S.C. Hayden. Copies of the paper still exist today. A rare UFO-water case, which was brought to public knowledge by the Houston Post, involved a 1987 sighting in the town of Josserand. Frank Nichols, a farmer known for his good character, heard a whirring sound, similar to some of his farm machinery. He immediately went outside to find out what was happening. He was shocked to see a large unknown object landed in his cornfield. The flying vessel was decorated with brilliant colored lights. Having heard the stories of the flying ships in local newspapers, he immediately knew that one of these ships was visiting his farm. 2 beings soon emerged, holding buckets. They asked Nichols for water. He obliged them. In all, he saw 6 to 8 crewmen who invited him to aboard their ship. Relating the details of his visit inside the ship, he told the newspaper reporters that the components of the vessel were far advanced from anything he had seen before. Welcome to Camp Hood, Texas. It is common knowledge among researchers that UFOs have an avid interest in nuclear energy. A number of U.S. military bases have been visited by unknown objects, clearly seen by military personnel. One of the very first cases of this kind took place at Camp Hood, Texas in 1949. The world's largest military installation in the free world is now named Fort Hood. The base is located in and around the city of Killeen. The months of March through June would have no less than a dozen reports of unknown flying objects, all by military personnel. The first report was made by 2 security patrolmen guarding the nuclear weapons storage site. The next day, just after midnight, a private first class reported an orange object which appeared to land at or near the base. 2 other groups of witnesses corroborated the sighting. The sightings continued for 4 months, with multiple witnesses often the case. One particularly bizarre sighting occurred when personnel attempting to find the cause of the sightings by releasing flares were interrupted by the sightings of several aerial phenomena. Multiple groups of witnesses around the base also saw the objects. The Camp Hood phenomena were never explained, although seen by as many as 100 different witnesses and confirmed by radar. The case was fully investigated by the NICAP group. No earthly explanation was ever found. A classic case. Classic photograph things remained fairly quiet in Texas until 1951, the year of the Lubbock lights. 3 Texas Technological College professors made the first report, a glowing group of lights that crossed the Lubbock skies on August 25th. This group would be followed another and then another. During the next few months, up to 12 groups of these boomerang-shaped objects would be seen. Air Force officials denied that any of their crafts were flying on the nights of the sightings, and no plane flights or other conventional objects were found to explain the lights. Many watched the skies for the unknown objects, including one, Carl Hart Jr., who on August 30th took 5 photographs of the UFOs. Attempts to find a conventional explanation for Lubbock lights failed. They are still a mystery to this day. Coming in for a landing. There are literally thousands of reports of UFOs in the sky, but few of a UFO actually landing. One of the best cases of an encounter of the second kind is the Levelland, Texas UFO landings. The riveting events began on November 2nd, 1957 in the then small town of about 10,000. Of the 15 separate reports that night, at least 8 were authentic in that reporter's name is known. There were an additional 7 reporters that remained anonymous. Several of the witnesses were members of the Levelland Police Department. The recipient of the 15 reports was Patrolman A.G. Fowler, who happened to have the desk duty for the police department. The first report was made by 2 friends driving in a pickup truck. A cigar-shaped object moved in their direction, causing the electrical system of their vehicle to fail. The report was dismissed at first. Fowler thought they had been drinking. The first report of an actual landing was made soon after. A man drove up and an egg-shaped object landed on the road's pavement. His vehicle also failed. The witness left his car and hid under he saw the UFO take off. Going back to the vehicle, it started right up. Minutes later, Fowler received another call from a witness who saw a UFO sitting on the road. His vehicle also failed. About 10 minutes later, Texas Tech University student Newell Wright was driving outside of Levelland when his vehicle failed. Getting out and checking under the hood for a cause, he was shocked to see a 125 feet long object sitting on the pavement. After a few minutes, the UFO rose up and disappeared. Arriving home, his parents encouraged him to report his encounter to the Levelland police. His report eventually appeared in the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book. While Wright was making his way home, another call is received by Fowler describing another landed UFO. Fowler was now convinced. He called his reports to officers in the field. No sooner than he had, 2 separate reports were made by policemen of unknown flying objects. The calls would continue throughout the day, and by the time the reports ended, the small town was crowded with newspaper, radio and television reporters, all wanting answers. The Air Force did investigate the sightings, but could not offer an explanation for what happened in Levelland, Texas. Going north up Interstate 35. As you head north on Interstate 35 and leave Dallas, soon you come to the city of Sherman. It has a brief limelight appearance in the UFO history in 1965, when a news photographer overheard a shortwave radio blast between 2 highway patrolmen discussing the sighting of a UFO tracked on radar and heading south. Soon, multiple witnesses were flooding radio and television stations with reports of the UFO. The photographer drove into Sherman and called the chief of police. He and the chief took off together, hunting the UFO. Soon they saw it, about 13 miles east of town on Highway 82. It was simply sitting in the sky. The photographer took a number of photos of the UFO, which was later examined by Air Force officials and astronomical experts. No reasonable explanation was ever made. A number of investigators have covered the Sherman sightings and examined the photographs. The case was alluded by Dr. J. Allen Hynek in his groundbreaking publication, The UFO Experience. UFO Illuminates Police Car. On Friday, September 3, 1965, another baffling UFO event occurred. At around 11 p.m., Deputy Sheriff Good, along with Chief McCoy, were riding on patrol south of the city of Damon. The chief spotted a purple light to the southwest, about 5 to 6 miles from them. They thought it could be something afire in the oil fields. Soon, however, a lighter blue object emerged from the large light and flew to the right. Maintaining this position, the two objects began to slowly move up into the sky. Though the objects were too far away to make out with binoculars, in a matter of seconds the UFOs were upon them, braking to a stop right above their vehicle. The vehicle and its surrounding area were brightly illuminated with a bath of purple. Hardly 100 feet away, it was now evident that there were no two objects. The two were opposite ends of one enormous object. Later, McCoy described the object to the Air Force. The bulk of the object was plainly visible at this time and appeared to be triangular-shaped with a bright purple light on the left end and the smaller, less bright blue light on the right end. The bulk of the object appeared to be dark gray in color with no other distinguishing features. It appeared to be about 200 feet wide and 40 to 50 feet thick in the middle, tapering off toward both ends. The two patrolmen made a break for it with the object almost directly overhead. Driving at speeds of over 100 miles per hour, they finally found themselves free of the object. As they fled the scene, they could see the object maneuver back to its original position in the oil fields. After gaining their composure, they decided to return to the scene. Arriving at the spot where they first saw the object, they observed the object begin the same routine as before. Frightened, they sped away. They would report their unusual encounter to Ellington Air Force Base. After conducting their investigation, Mayor Lawrence Leach, Jr. made this statement to the Project Blue Book. "There is no doubt in my mind," he said, "that they definitely saw some unusual object or phenomenon. Both officers appeared to be intelligent, mature, level-headed persons capable of sound judgment and reasoning. There has been no explanation for what the two patrolmen saw that night, but on an interesting side note, this case occurred on the same night as the celebrated UFO incident in X-Tier. There's something out there in the woods." In 1980, a compelling yet puzzling set of events took place in the piney woods of Texas. The case is generally known as the Cash-Landrum encounter. This sighting took place at the same time that airmen at the Bentwaters Woodbridge raft bases were chasing strange lights and craft in the Rendlesham Forest in the United Kingdom. Betty Cash, along with Vicky Landrum and young Colby Landrum, were driving near the town of Huffman. Up ahead on the road and just hovering in the air was a diamond-shaped UFO. The craft would shoot beams of fire to the ground as Betty left the vehicle and stood watching the otherworldly craft. To their utter surprise, soon the skies were abuzz with helicopters. They appeared to be attempting to encircle the diamond UFO. As Betty returned to their car, she found the door handle hot. When the three arrived back home, soon they were all very sick, with Betty being the worst of the three, having stood outside the car. She was admitted to a local hospital for 15 days, and all three witnesses were treated for radiation sickness and burns. Their illnesses were life-threatening. Betty only got worse, with sores covering her body and hair loss. She was diagnosed as having skin cancer. There was clear evidence that asphalt road was burned from the heat of the UFO. This damage was quickly repaired. Betty's illnesses would not be so quickly dismissed, however. The three witnesses eventually sued the U.S. government for damages. A congressional hearing was held, but the government was not held responsible for any compensation. After years of struggle, Betty died on the 18th anniversary of the day of the sighting. The Stephenville Sightings. Of all of the cases in Texas, no other has had more eyewitnesses than the highly celebrated case which occurred in and around the Stephenville area in 2008. The Stephenville, Texas case was more of a wave than anything else. This wave would spark a media frenzy, gaining the farming community worldwide attention, with a number of the eyewitnesses appearing on major news outlets. Reports of enormous UFOs moving over Stephenville were made by some of the city's most esteemed citizens, and many of the everyday people jumped on the bandwagon. Along with individual reports, there were videos, photographs, drawings, and sketches handed over to the MUFON organization when the group arrived in the community for a full-fledged investigation in January 2008. Reports of U.S. Air Force jets in the same area and time frame as the large UFOs brought about conspiracy theories and even claims of witness intimidation. MUFON was overtaxed in attempting to organize the normally routine task of taking eyewitness statements. No shyness here, as everyone wanted their story told. The sightings in and around the Stephenville area soon spread outward, and many researchers felt that the entire state was being visited by UFOs. But hasn't that always been the case in Texas? Have you had an encounter yourself, or maybe have you seen an UFO? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.